Unfortunately, the graphics card market still kind of sucks right now. Prices aren't amazing, there aren't many great value options, and there hasn't been much change in prices over the last 6 to 12 months. But if you're building a new gaming PC, if you want to get into PC gaming for the first time, or if your existing graphics card is starting to feel a bit old, it's still worth discussing what the best GPU options are right now and what you should do to make the best out of a mediocre situation. So today's video is all about making some graphics card recommendations and giving advice on whether you should buy now or wait. But before we get into that,
today's sponsor spot is brought to you by Antec and their brand new C7 ARGB mid-tower ATX case. This beauty costs just $140 US and is available in either a black or white design. But whichever model you choose, you'll be able to view all of your glorious hardware thanks to a 270-degree panoramic display featuring 4mm tempered glass panels. But it's not just about the aesthetics, offering a multi-directional air intake design with fine mesh paneling. The C7 also supports up to 10 fans and simultaneous installation of 360mm radiators in the top and side. Included are 3 120mm PWM and ARGB reverse fans, along with a single 120mm fan in the rear. Also included is a controller that can synchronize lighting effects and fan speeds with your motherboard. Installation's a breeze thanks to the screw-free and clip handle design, while the back connect motherboard interface allows for easy cable management. There is much more to the C7 ARGB, so for more information, please check the link in the video description.
the first question that we need to answer is whether you should consider purchasing a graphics card at all. The classic, should you buy or should you wait? Naturally, this depends on your situation and how capable your existing GPU is, or whether you have one at all. But generally speaking, right now, the higher end the GPU you are thinking of buying, the more you should be thinking of waiting instead. This is because next generation graphics cards are expected to be unveiled within the next 6 months, so we're currently right at the end of the current generation product cycle. Nvidia's RTX 50 series is expected to launch in the fourth quarter of 2024, although recent rumors have claimed this could be changed to a January 2025 release, and AMD's RDNA 4 generation is set to be unveiled at CES in January of next year. As is typical for new GPU generations, the higher end products will launch first, followed by lower tier models in the months after. This means you'll be waiting a shorter amount of time to get a new high-end GPU and a longer time for more affordable products. This is complicated by the expectation that RDNA 4's best GPU will actually be mid-range overall, so our recommendations are as follows. For high-end buyers, you should consider waiting for new GPUs, as the RTX 50 series, starting with the RTX 5080 and 5090, is expected to arrive within the next 6 months. For upper mid-range buyers, you should also consider waiting, as AMD's RDNA 4 series is set to launch in January. Even if you normally stick to one GPU brand, it's worth waiting in these product segments to see how this affects competition and pricing around the launch. For lower parts of the mid-range, we're probably not going to see new models for 9 months, which is a long time to wait, so it's easier to justify buying in this tier. And the same can be said for the lower tier and mainstream market, as we're unlikely to see new GPUs until the middle of 2025. I'm not saying you definitely should buy a new graphics card right now, waiting is fine, but if you're putting together a new budget PC, you're probably not going to be burned by new GPUs immediately making your purchase obsolete. So if you've decided to buy, what are the best options? Well, the best performing graphics card on the market remains the GeForce RTX 4090, currently priced above its MSRP at $1,700 US. This is a huge amount of money to spend on a GPU, but it is the best. So if you have well over $1,000 to spend, there's no better buy than the RTX 4090. At around $1,000, which is still a lot but slightly more sensible, there's 3 options: the GeForce RTX 4080 Super and RTX 4080, as well as the Radeon RX 7900 XTX. The RTX 4080 can be immediately removed from contention, as it's priced at $1,200, several $100s more than the 4080 Super, while being slower overall. The remaining choices are the RTX 4080 Super starting at $960 US and the RX 7900 XTX at $910. For rasterization, the Radeon model is the better buy, as it's about 10% faster while coming in $50 cheaper. But if you value ray tracing, the 4080 Super is over 30% faster on average in our testing. GeForce GPUs have a superior feature set as well, including access to DLSS, which is the best upscaler. In the higher parts of the market, I think ray tracing is more important than it is for budget models, and generally, features like DLSS and frame generation also work better on higher tier parts. With that in mind, I think the RTX 4080 Super is the overall better buy, though if you don't care about ray tracing or Nvidia's features, the 7900 XTX does offer okay value. The next tier down is the $700-ish market, which includes the $780 GeForce RTX 4070 Ti Super, the $730 RTX 4070 Ti, as well as the $690 Radeon RX 7900 XT. Again, we can remove a GPU from contention straight away. The 4070 Ti is about 10% slower than the Ti Super, but it's only 6% cheaper and has less VRAM at 12GB versus 16GB. The 4070 Ti is a bad purchase with the way things are priced right now. There is a reasonable price gap between the remaining GeForce and Radeon models. The 4070 Ti Super is 13% more expensive than the 7900 XT, but is 6% slower in rasterization at 4K. On the other hand, the Ti Super is much faster for ray tracing with a 30% advantage, though on a performance per dollar basis, the GeForce model is just 15% better. The GeForce card also benefits from a superior feature set including DLSS. In this price segment, I think the choice is less obvious than at the tier above, as there's a larger pricing gap between the Nvidia and AMD models. The 7900 XT being faster than the 4070 Ti Super in a lot of game configurations, while also being nearly $100 US cheaper, makes it a good value purchase, and I'd lean towards it here. But the GeForce model is clearly better if you value ray tracing or features like DLSS, and that's understandable when handing over at least $700. Your preferences and the way you game is going to be a big factor in deciding which way to go here. Between about $500 and $600, there are four models to consider. There's the $580 GeForce RTX 4070 Super, the $540 RTX 4070, the $550 Radeon RX 7900 GRE, and the $480 RX 7800 XT. With this pricing structure, the RTX 4070 stands out as poor value. For just $40 more or a 7% premium, the RTX 4070 Super offers nearly 20% more performance. The reverse is true for the Radeon models, where it's actually the higher priced card that's worse value. The RX 7900 GRE costs 15% more than the 7800 XT at the moment, but only offers 6 to 8% more performance, making the 7800 XT a better value purchase. When comparing between GeForce and Radeon, we come to a similar conclusion. The 7900 GRE makes no sense at $550 when it has similar rasterization performance to the 4070 Super, yet for just $30 more, the GeForce card is much faster at ray tracing. If you have a $600 budget and you want to get the most out of that money, the GeForce card is the way to go. The RX 7800 XT is in an interesting position. It's $100 or 17% cheaper than the 4070 Super and 11% cheaper than the 4070, while sitting in the middle of those models in rasterization performance. This makes it about 10% cheaper per frame than the 4070 Super and 18% cheaper per frame than the 4070, which we already know to be a poor value card. If you don't care about ray tracing all that much, this is a tempting position for the Radeon card. If you do care about ray tracing though, the 4070 Super is clearly better value, offering a 20% lower cost per frame than the 7800 XT, simply because it's about 50% faster in this area. If we extend the comparison to include $450 models, we bring in the GeForce RTX 4060 Ti 16GB and the Radeon RX 6800 XT, which is still available. The 6800 XT is basically a slightly slower, slightly cheaper 7800 XT, so it doesn't make much difference. The 4060 Ti 16GB though is quite poor value at $450, offering the same VRAM capacity as the 7800 XT, but providing substantially less rasterization performance. The 7800 XT is 40% faster and has a 24% lower cost per frame. Even for ray tracing, both models offer similar performance, so it just makes sense to spend the extra $30 to get the Radeon model, given how much faster it is outside of ray trace games. Where things land overall is that the RX 7800 XT is a great buy if you have about $500 to spend and can't stretch the budget any higher to include models like the RTX 4070 Super. It's simply better than its competitors at its price. But in the general upper mid-range of the market, the 4070 Super is also a decent buy if your budget stretches to $580, particularly if you plan on utilizing its ray tracing and DLSS capabilities. The next tier down, the lower mid-range, has several options. There's the GeForce RTX 4060 Ti 8GB at $365, along with the $390 Radeon RX 7700 XT and $350 Radeon RX 6800. The 4060 Ti 8GB can be immediately removed from contention due to its inadequate 8GB VRAM buffer, which we believe is insufficient at this price point, and we've shown that in great detail recently. The 7700 XT offers 12GB and the RX 6800 16GB, which is much more suitable when spending over $300 US. As for which Radeon model you should buy, this depends on availability. The RX 6800 is still available in some regions, but not all. If it is available, the 6800 is slightly faster than the 7700 XT, while including more VRAM, and right now it's $40 cheaper as well, a great value choice for just $350. If it's not available, the 7700 XT is still decent as it's generally faster than the RTX 4060 Ti 8GB, including offering similar ray tracing performance. Also, it offers an actually adequate amount of VRAM at 12GB, and in our opinion, that's worth the extra $25. At around $300 US, there is a lot of competition. There's the $290 GeForce RTX 4060, the $280 RTX 3060, the $320 Radeon RX 7600 XT, the $260 RX 7600, the $300 RX 6750 XT, and finally, the $270 Intel Arc A770 16GB. All of these models are within $60 of one another right now, which makes a decision on which way to go quite difficult. Let's narrow things down. The RTX 4060 is only 7% faster than the RTX 3060, it's 4% more expensive, it has less VRAM at 8GB versus 12GB, though it does support DLSS frame generation. Personally, I would much prefer the extra VRAM over DLSS frame gen, so GeForce buyers should opt for the RTX 3060 over the newer model while it's still available. From Team Red, the best competitor right now looks to be the older RX 6750 XT or 6700 XT while it's still available. It's 13% faster than the RX 7600 XT while costing $20 less, and while you do have to sacrifice 4GB of VRAM, dropping down from 16GB to 12GB, that's still sufficient at this performance tier and price point. It's also about 20% faster than the RX 7600 while costing 15% more, and it features more VRAM as the RX 7600 is an 8GB model. This puts the value equation firmly in the camp of the older 6700 XT series. Meanwhile, the Intel Arc A770 16GB isn't especially good value either, offering similar performance to the RX 7600, but some issues around game compatibility that we discussed in a recent video. So around $300, the main battle is the RX 6750 XT versus the RTX 3060, or if only new cards are available, the RX 7600 series versus RTX 4060. The 6750 XT is over 20% faster than the 3060 for just $20 more, which is a no-brainer. The RX 7600 is less competitive as it's only slightly faster and slightly cheaper than the RTX 4060, while the 7600 XT is passable thanks to its small performance increase and double the VRAM at a higher price. Really, the last gen 6750 XT is far ahead of the pack, and then if it's not available, it's a toss-up between the Radeon and GeForce cards depending on your preferences for overall cost, VRAM capacity, and DLSS support. I honestly don't think either brand has a standout buy in the newer series, with all options feeling a bit expensive. The most future-proof option would be the RX 7600 XT with its 16GB of VRAM, but I hesitate to call it the outright best. Below this tier, we have the $190 GeForce RTX 3050, the $230 Radeon RX 6600 XT, though they are becoming hard to find, the $190 RX 6600, and the $200 Intel Arc A750. We can immediately remove the RTX 3050 from contention as it's a terrible product offering much less performance than the other models around this price. Seriously, it's 25% slower than the RX 6600 at the same price. Don't buy it. The Radeon models here are the clear standout, especially the RX 6600, which offers the best cost per frame. The RX 6600 XT has a slight price premium, but is also a good choice if you have $40 more to spend and you want a faster GPU. The Arc A750 isn't a bad performing model, it's a little faster than the RX 6600 in our benchmarks at a $10 premium, but I don't think this is enough of a price to performance proposition to mitigate any game compatibility issues. Radeon cards are more likely to work well across a broad variety of games. The $190 Radeon RX 6600 is really the cheapest product we can recommend you purchase. The RX 6500 XT and RX 6400 are available below $150 US, but both are terrible GPUs in a multitude of ways. Same can be said of the GeForce RTX 3050 6GB, which is far too slow to justify a $175 price tag, and the Arc A580 suffers a similar fate to other Intel GPUs, where it just isn't cheap enough at $170 US. I'd love to say there's a great graphics card available for just $150 US brand new, but there isn't. So if you can't quite afford the RX 6600, your best bet is the used market. So those are the graphics cards right now that we can recommend across the lineup, and how the competition stacks up between Nvidia, AMD and Intel. There are a lot of very close battles that could swing one way or another depending on the exact features you are looking for, and there are a few standout must-buys. Competition right now is the strongest around $500 and around $300 US, where there are lots of options, but outside of that, the graphics card market is in desperate need of a shake-up through new generations, which thankfully aren't too far away. Of course, I just want to reiterate here that while I did go through and recommend GPUs at various price points, I'm not suggesting that buying a graphics card right now is a good idea, or that any of the options at that price are actually what we'd class as good value in general. There's lots of understandable frustration around GPU prices at the moment, but there are also people who will be building their very first gaming PC right now, and those people need to know which option is best. So anyway, that's it for this one. If you do appreciate the testing, analysis, and other videos that we do here at Hardware Unboxed, please consider subscribing to the channel and supporting us directly via our Patreon or Floatplane accounts. Links to those are in the description below. If you sign up, you'll gain access to some cool benefits and perks. We've got our Discord community, great place to chat about tech. We've got our monthly live streams, BTS content, plenty of good stuff there. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.